right. And I see our next speaker in the room. Oh my gosh, with a great big smile on her face. You have been here all day championing the International Women's Day. Thank you so much, Rhonda Travers. If you do not know Rhonda, let me tell you a few things about this incredible woman. She is a well-reputed and dynamic keynote speaker to corporations, nonprofits, entrepreneurs, and she is the winner of the 2023 ACA Business Club Business of the Year Award. Woo! Let's hear it for some parties and confetti and balloons and all the things. Her mission is to form organizations and transform individuals. Her topic today she's going to be sharing with us on is engaging others and creating a culture of collaboration. Well, you are in the right house, and so are we today. The music that she's loving now, if you have not sung this song before, you haven't drank enough Guinness. That's all I'm going to say, because this song is called, I actually paid someone to stop on a piano because it was so much. But anyways, it is such a great song. It is Journey, Don't Stop Believing. And I'm sure you all know that song. You all know that song. The thing that you may not know about her, now we had someone earlier talked about who had never tasted a chocolate ice cream cone. Well, this is the opposite, because her favorite ice cream is the St. Louis famous gooey butter cake ice cream. It's an ice cream day today, International Women's Day. Eat the bucket. No guilt, no shame, summit, eat it while you're here. Okay. She is going to be giving to everyone a private 30-minute engagement and retention strategy session. So that's going to go in the chat. You guys can grab that link. And then one lucky person is going to get a $300 value of a private 60-minute strategy session plus 2 books. One is on the power of tenacity. Well, there's a word. And one on how to leave a legacy and mentorship. Thank you so much, Rhonda. That's so generous of you. And honey, welcome to the Stand Up, Speak Up, Show Up stage. It's all you. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Deb, for celebrating International Women's Day, bringing this community together throughout the year and not just today, so that we can honor the sisterhood of all women across the globe every day. And congratulations, everyone who is here and ready to go, because you are investing in yourself. How often do we actually invest in ourselves? And it's probably safe to say, and type yes in the chat, if you had at least one conversation with one person today, or perhaps sent a text to somebody today, or sent an email with someone today. And for those speakers on the call here, yes, you've actually had one conversation today. Communication is so critical in our everyday lives. Think about all the different relationships that we have, both personally and professionally. And communication is critical to build and nurture and engage those relationships and also achieve results, especially on that business side. So wave some hands if in communication you've often been in a conversation where you just don't feel like you're heard. Has anyone, just raise your hand if you've ever been in a conversation where you just aren't feeling heard, or that conversation that makes you cringe. Have you ever had a conversation that makes you cringe? You're putting it off. You don't know how that person's going to react. You're nervous about how that person's reaction is going to be. So you're just like, I don't even want to navigate through that conversation. Or wave your hand again if maybe you've been in a meeting and the only result at the end of the meeting was indecision. That there's not a meeting of the minds. There's not a lot going on. Well, today I just wanted to share a few strategies around how to create engagement and collaboration, and how to have those communication strategies to navigate through those challenges, those conversations that make us cringe, so that we can step into our excellence of creating effective communication. And the more we step into that excellence, the more confident we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a couple of my lessons learned over the years of how that communication works. And someone just mentioned it earlier, starting with the first one, the core of any relationship, make it be personal or professional, is what? You can mouth the word with me because you're on mute, is people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. Trust is the core of every relationship. It's authenticity. So how are we able to be authentic? There's a common thread with many of the amazing speakers that we've had today of being authentic with ourselves. And being authentic is that honesty and that transparency that we have. Because the more that others trust us, especially if you have teams, it's known, research has shown that 22% of employees leave organizations because of lack of trust. And a lot of that trust is because whoever they're directly involved with is that's their manager. They don't trust their manager. And that's my one first lesson learned about 25 years ago. Don't do the math there. I was a newly promoted manager. And, I have a 30-year corporate career in internal audit, risk management, and compliance. And so, in other words, for 30 years, I had to tell people what they were doing wrong nicely. Because a lot of internal audit is understanding what those processes are and how to improve those, or, from a regulatory standpoint, maybe they're doing something that's out of compliance. So you've had to really have that effective communication. And I worked in audit departments for 30 years. And so along the way, with being a newly promoted manager, a new auditor, she said, you know what? You come across as fake. And it's because when I was that newly promoted manager, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm now responsible for a team of employees. I'm responsible for these projects. I have to be perfect. I have to make sure that I know all the answers. I know what's going on, and that I'm going to lead this team into getting those deadlines done. Have you ever felt that way before? That you have to know all the answers. You have to be perfect. And that was coming across in how I was communicating with my team. Well, who gets up in the morning and says, I want to be fake? I want to, that's not who we are. That's not how we provide authenticity with others. So I learned over time as that new manager to show lessons learned, AKA mistakes, and to show, okay, here's the mistakes I made along the way. So I can just save you some time, some frustration. And that's creating honesty. It's showing the other person we're not perfect. No one's perfect. I love to meet someone who is perfect. And current studies show that 98% of employees, they want to see and learn from their senior leaders about their mistakes. That creates trust. That creates that honesty and transparency. And even when we were working on so many deadlines that were stressful, I added humor. I thought I was funny, but I try to add humor to be honest and transparent with my team. I was in this one meeting and I could just tell everyone was tense, stressed. We had a lot of deadlines. It kind of sucked. And I paused and I just said, guys, this is like nailing Jello to a wall, right? Just lining up, but being also transparent. Yeah, we've got deadlines, but we're going to work on this together. And now, as a business owner and a consultant and how I serve clients, authenticity is very important too. It's easy to fall back in that trap of thinking of how I should be or being perfect and being able to answer every single question that maybe a client or someone is asking me. Going back to, we feel like we need to know all the answers, right? But that's not authentic. That's not being ourselves. So I overcome that by saying, you know what? That's a great question. I don't know that. I'm going to find the answer for you. That's honesty. And this is why I have a great network of referral partners, because we can't serve everybody. And I want to be authentic of why I launched my business, my goal, my value, where I know my God-given gift of how I can add value to others is to work with others with that leadership piece. How can I add value to empower others or to empower organizations to create success for their employees and empower their employees? That's where I know I can serve. And so if I'm talking to someone and I can hear, they have a different need, or there's just something that's just not in alignment with who I am, I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you. I've got great referral partners here. Let me contact and connect you with somebody else who I believe is going to be able to serve you better. That's honesty. That's authenticity. That's trust. And I would hope that someday that we keep that trust in mind so that they can continue to maybe reach back out to me. Type yes in the chat if maybe you've already, maybe dissolved a relationship, either personally or professionally, because you didn't, you just got that spidey sense that, what, there's something wrong here. I don't really trust this person. Have you ever just said, what, I'm going to just disassociate myself with that person? Trust is the number one relationship core of how we can build and create collaboration with somebody else, either being, with your team members or personally. And the second is all about perspective. I'm sure that if I asked every one of you, what 3 things do you see in your room? And I tell you what I see in my room, which is camera, a screen, and above, I've got some picture frames. My list of what I see in my room and your list of what you see in your room, we're going to be different, right? So who's right and who's wrong? Neither. It's all about perspective. Whenever you get more than one person in a conversation, I guess unless you're talking to yourself, if you more than you get one person in a conversation, you're going to have a different perspective. So ways to navigate through and create collaboration is finding common ground. That's what collaboration is all about. How can we find common ground so that we can meet people where they're at? And as we are talking in a conversation and communicating with others and having, that those things that make us cringe and that we might shy away from, some things to think about that we're navigating and juggling is we all communicate differently. We have a different language. We all learn differently in how we receive information from one another that causes those communication gaps. And with all of our different perspectives, what is the role that you're of the person that you're talking to? In audit, we spoke with different levels of organization or different levels of departments in the organization. So one thing to go into when you're entering into a conversation, either being with if you're working in your own company, your organization with another department, or as you're serving your clients, is understand, well, what role do they have? If they have a financial role and you're sharing a solution or you're sharing a proposal, think about the cost associated with that and work from their perspective in that conversation. What is their, what's their perspective? What priorities are they thinking about in their daily prioritization of what they generate? And what can we do differently to speak their language? If you're talking to an executive or the CEO or the business owner, think about the strategic impact of what you want to portray and what you want to communicate so that you're understanding their perspective a little bit more and being able to relate and finding common ground around that. If you have a team, if you have employees, one of the things to think about is what are their motivating drivers? Who has heard of Simon Sinek? Basically, Tina talked about TED Talks earlier. Simon Sinek has a great TED Talk around the why. He also has a great book around, start with the why. the more we can find common ground with what is motivating that person, that's going to help create that collaboration. I had an employee that, she was an auditor, and usually the progression of the career path of an auditor was auditor and senior auditor, an audit supervisor, audit manager, and then getting promoted back out in the field in a finance position. But she loved research and she loved being an auditor. What would she have done if I didn't know what that motivating driver was, and I just trying to keep pushing her towards that promotion? She probably would have quit, right? Or maybe wanted to transfer to a different department. But because I knew what motivated her, I took the time to build that trust, to build that rapport and collaborate with her. That's really going to help with understanding that. So understanding why your team's on your team, and then also your clients. Why did they start their business? The more you can understand their why, the more you can help serve them and create that collaboration of that meeting of the minds in that conversation and creating that confidence around that. And along the way, the more that we can gain that perspective, that last piece is around how we listen. And there was a lot of comments that we've had all morning and all day around the power of listening. When people feel like they are heard, they are 4.6 times more likely to go that extra mile with you. That's what helps engage. That's what helps create and build those relationships, is how we listen to others. So I've got a fun thing. Write down the word listen and type in the chat, what other word can you spell with listen? I'm going to give you a few moments here. And we talked about it earlier. Renee talked about this earlier. And that is silent. People want to be heard. So, we're going to be silent. But it takes more than being silent, because have you ever been in a conversation and you've already shared your perspective on something, and you're listening back to them, and you're already thinking about what you are going to say next instead of really listening to them? So we may be silent, but are we focused? And are we providing that intentional listening? That we're listening to learn instead of listening to respond. And with that, a lot of times, in my corporate career, once again, being audit, you're having to share, some things that they need to fix. And then working with employees over all those years, you're needing to provide some feedback to that employee, where, going back to that cringeworthy conversation, we're cringing a little bit because, like, ooh, how are they going to respond to us when we're providing that feedback, right? If you've been in that conversation where I'm like, ugh, I'm cringing a little bit here. So going in with the intent that we're going to listen to learn when we're sharing this feedback, you can approach it 3 different ways. One is restating. Because a lot of times, if you're giving someone's feedback, and there's a lot of heightened emotion, when you restate their words back to them, they might go like, ooh, I didn't mean it this way. So one thing you can say is, okay, to make sure I heard correctly, and then restate their words. And this really shows that you are listening. You're giving them a platform being heard, and you just heard them. And that can also probably de-escalate that level of emotion. The second piece is to rephrase. I work with the clients a lot where I'm gathering a lot of information, and I just want to make sure I've got it all. Because sometimes when you're rephrasing something back to someone, then that gives them the opportunity, the opportunity to say, oh, I thought I had everything, but I don't. And then that opens that conversation up again. And the third way for intentional listening is to reassure. When you are in a conversation that's that cringeworthy moment of you just don't know how that person's going to respond, and they are providing that different perspective, and it's perspective, not conflict. It's collaboration, common ground over conflict. And that is the 3 words you can say is, tell me more. Tell me more about what you're thinking about this. That opens up yet another platform to help others, to know that you are listening, to understand. And you're creating more confidence because you're not admitting that you're diminishing your perspective. It's just more you want to learn more about what that other person is, and that just opens up for a brighter conversation. Because I'm all about one of my favorite quotes, and I've got this written down here, and that is, it's from Maya Angelou, and it is, people will never will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And that goes with that open conversation, giving a platform for people to be heard. And the very last strategy I want to share with you, ladies, is people want to be appreciated. When people feel appreciated, they're going to go that extra mile with you. That's engaging. That's creating collaboration. So how do you appreciate others? How do you show others that you appreciate them? Your employees. Yesterday was an employee appreciation day, but we should be appreciating employees all the time. We should be appreciating our team members all the time. And on a personal note, our girlfriends, our family members. How are we doing that? And how can we show that it's sincere, specific, and timely? I used to go around as a new manager going, thanks for your hard work. And thank you does go a long way. But how can you make that more sincere and specific? Thank you, Susie, so much for all that extra time you have put in for the past month while we found Bob's replacement. Because of what you did and the extra mile that you just went, our client thinks that we are rock stars. Thank you. It's just so far how we can go with a thank you. It could be a phone call, it could be a text, it could be an e-card, it could be a good old handwritten note getting in the mail. So ladies, I hope that you can step into that cringeworthy conversation with more confidence and take the cringe out of it. And I would love for you to type in that chat of what's one thing that you can take away from today so that you can lead into a conversation that's collaborative, and it's not necessarily conflict. It's all about perspective. And how do we find that common ground together so that you can step up into your excellence and be authentic with yourself and knowing how you are adding value to that conversation.
Yay, love, hearts, jazz hands, all the things. That was fantastic, Rhonda. Thank you so much. Everyone was